GMOs refer to the foods that are made by combining the DNA of different species that would never breed in nature. For example, tomatoes that contain fish genes. Genetically modified foods were first introduced to Canadian supermarkets in 1994 with the Flavor Saver tomato, which did not contain fish genes, and was engineered to be resistant to rotting and therefore remain ripe longer than a regular tomato. Since then, the number of genetically engineered foods has grown considerably, and most products that we find in supermarkets are genetically modified, as anything that contains corn, canola, soybeans, and white sugar is, in fact, GM. It is also important to consider the fact that animals used for food are fed from GM crops, so meat and animal products could also be considered genetically modified. Additionally, papayas, squash, and cottonseed oil that originate in the United States tend to be from GM crops. Initially, genetically engineering food crops was believed to be the solution to world hunger, as the crops could be made resistant to pesticides and herbicides, and as a result more food could be produced, and the costs could be lowered. Unfortunately, the real outcome is very different from the intended one. Bugs and weeds are becoming more and more resistant to pesticides and herbicides, so we need more and more chemicals, and consequently the environment, the farmers, and the health of consumers are harmed. With that being said, genetically modified foods are beneficial to some, such as Monsanto, the corporation that owns 86% of GMO seeds, and that also owns Roundup, the brand that sells the herbicides to which Monsanto's GM seeds are resistant. The company that also used to manufacture DDT and Agent Orange made $11.822 billion in 2011, and it is known for having employees with conflicts of interest. One example is Michael A. Friedman, MD, who was an acting commissioner of the United States Food and Drug Administration, FDA, Department of Health and Human Services, and then became the senior vice president of clinical affairs at Monsanto's pharmaceutical division. Or Michael Taylor, who was the legal advisor of the United States Food and Drug Administration's Bureau of Medical Devices and Bureau of Foods, then became the executive assistant to the commissioner of the FDA, then deputy commissioner of the policy at the United States FDA, and then became the head of the Washington, D.C. office of Monsanto. The main problem with genetically engineered crops is that they have only been on the market for less than 20 years, so we have no way of truly knowing what the long-term effects might be. It's known that the engineering of one segment of DNA will generally not have one lone result, but instead will most likely cause a domino effect and have surprising consequences. Mutations can alter the functioning of the natural genes of the plants in ways that we cannot predict. A 2013 peer-reviewed report from the journal Entropy showed that residue from Roundup herbicide present in food was linked to Parkinson's disease, infertility, and cancers. BT corn, engineered by Monsanto, produces a protein that, when ingested, ruptures the pest's stomach. And who knows what could happen to the stomach of a human that consumes BT corn a couple of times a week over the course of their entire life. We cannot know the long-term impact. Of course, there's a chance that a person might not notice any adverse health effects on themselves. But since these foods involve the manipulation of DNA, there's no way to be sure that future generations won't be impacted. In Europe, all GMOs are subject to extensive science-based evaluations. So far, 48 GMOs have been approved, and the majority of those were for animal feed and food processing. In Europe, any products that contain more than 0.9% GMO ingredients must be labeled as such before making their way into supermarkets. In North America, however, there is no labeling. This is not only a health and safety issue, but also a human rights issue. People should be allowed to know what the food they buy contains, especially when it comes to something like GMOs, which are suspected of introducing allergens and toxins to food, to cause antibiotic resistance, to change the nutrient content of crops, to cause kidney and liver problems, and lead to many environmental risks. This is a very important matter that could potentially have a very big impact on our health and the health of our planet. The public should make an effort to educate themselves about this and decide if they are comfortable consuming genetically modified foods, instead of just accepting to do so without knowing all the facts. Those who want to eliminate genetically modified foods from their diets should focus on buying organic products and research what brands opt for non-GMO ingredients, for example, by going to nongmoproject.org. It is also very important to spread the word and actively encourage GMO labeling. People can help by writing letters to their provincial agriculture minister or federal member of parliament, donating to organizations like CBAN, keeping up with recent developments pertaining to genetically engineered foods, buying non-GMO certified products, and sharing videos and articles about GMOs.